I'd found my dream home in Northwood, a perfect new beginning. But on day one, a corrupt cop's boots on my lawn and the cold steel of handcuffs shattered that illusion, dragging me into a fight I never saw coming. The box was heavy, filled with books I probably should have donated, but the weight felt good. It felt real. Each step up the cracked concrete path to my new front door was a step away from my old life. A new town, a new job, a new start. The sun was warm on my back, and the air in this idyllic little suburb called Northwood smelled like freshly cut grass and possibilities. I'd made it. I was finally building something for myself. I set the box down on the porch with a grunt, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead, and allowed myself a moment to just take it all in. The charming two-story house, the neatly manicured lawn, the big oak tree providing the perfect amount of shade. This was it. This was home. My moving truck was parked on the street, and yes, it was taking up a bit more space than a regular car, but the road was wide and sleepy. I hadn't seen more than 2 cars pass in the last hour. I figured a few hours of inconvenience for the neighbors was a small price to pay for a lifetime of quiet living. I was just turning to go back for another box when a sharp squeal of tires cut through the peaceful afternoon. A police cruiser, the classic black and white, had pulled up at a sharp angle, effectively blocking my moving truck in. I felt a familiar low-level thrum of anxiety, the kind that every black man learns to live with, but I pushed it down. This was Northwood. The friendly realtor had told me how safe and welcoming it was. This was probably just a friendly hello. The officer who got out was anything but friendly. He was a wall of a man, with a thick neck that strained against his collar, and a pair of mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes but seemed to radiate pure contempt. He didn't walk. He stomped. Each step on the asphalt was a statement of authority. He stopped a few feet from me, planting his hands on his hips, his thumbs hooked behind a belt laden with gear. "This your truck?" he grunted, jerking his chin towards the vehicle. "Yes, officer," I said, trying to keep my voice even and friendly. I gave him a small, polite smile. "Just moving in. I should be unloaded and out of the way in a couple of hours." He took a slow step closer, his boots crunching on the gravel at the edge of my new lawn. "You think you can just block a public street for a couple of hours?" He said the words like they were a personal insult. "Oh, no, sir. I checked. There's plenty of room for cars to pass. I didn't think it would be a problem," I explained, gesturing to the wide gap on the other side of the road. "I'll decide what is and isn't a problem around here," he snapped. His jaw was tight. "You got a permit for this?" My mind raced. A permit? For a moving truck on a residential street? A permit? No, I wasn't aware I needed one. I can move it right now if it's an issue. "Get it done," he said, turning his back as if the conversation was over. "Yes, sir. Right away," I said, relieved. I just wanted this guy gone so I could get back to the excitement of my new life. I walked over to the driver's side of the truck, fumbling in my pocket for the keys. But as my hand closed around them, I heard his heavy footsteps behind me again. "Let me see some ID." The request was flat, a command, not a question. I froze, my hand still in my pocket. I turned slowly. "My ID? It's in my wallet, in my car over there," I said, pointing to my sedan parked neatly in the driveway. "The truck keys are in my pocket." His lip curled into a sneer. "Funny. A guy fumbling in his pocket when a police officer is behind him. Looks a little suspicious, don't you think?" My blood ran cold. This wasn't about the truck. This was never about the truck. "Officer, I was just getting the keys, like you asked." "I asked for your ID," he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. He was right in my personal space now. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Now you're refusing to identify yourself. You're giving me attitude. I don't like attitude." Before I could even process what was happening, his hand shot out and shoved me, hard. The force was stunning. My back slammed against the cold metal of the moving truck, knocking the wind out of me. My head connected with a rivet with a sickening crack. Stars exploded behind my eyes, and for a second, the whole world went fuzzy. He grabbed my arm, twisting it painfully behind my back. "You're resisting arrest," he barked, his voice loud in the quiet street. "Resisting? I haven't done anything." I gasped, pain shooting up my shoulder. "You're a new face in my town, running your mouth, blocking my streets." "That's enough for me," he grunted, wrenching my other arm back. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in my ears, sealing my humiliation. He had me pinned against my own truck, on my own property, on the first day of my new life. He leaned in close, his voice a venomous whisper. "Welcome to Northwood, boy. Time to learn how we do things here." He shoved me again for good measure, laughing under his breath. He thought he had all the power. He thought he'd won. That's when a soft, frail voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, Officer Miller?" We both turned. Standing on the porch of my new house was an elderly woman. She was small, with wispy white hair and a floral print dress, leaning heavily on a cane. She must have come out of the house while I was being assaulted. Miller's face soured. "Ma'am, this is official police business. Please go back inside." The woman took a slow, deliberate step forward. Her gaze not on me, but locked directly onto Miller. Her voice, though quiet, was as sharp and clear as glass. "I don't think so, David. I was just waiting for my ride, but I find I have a few things to say about how you're treating the new owner of my house." Miller's smug expression faltered for just a fraction of a second when she used his first name. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you don't know what's going on." "I know exactly what's going on," she interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "I saw everything from the living room window, and I have to say I'm deeply disappointed." She took another step, her cane making a soft thump on the porch steps. "You know, my son is supposed to be picking me up any minute now. When he gets here, I'll be sure to tell him just how his decorated sergeant-at-arms is welcoming new, tax-paying citizens to his jurisdiction." She paused, letting the words hang in the air before delivering the final, devastating blow. "I'm sure the chief of police will be very interested to hear all about it." The world seemed to hold its breath. The chirping of crickets in the afternoon sun, the distant hum of a lawnmower, it all faded into a ringing silence. Officer Miller, or David, as she called him, went rigid. I could feel the tension through the arm he was still gripping. He slowly let go, as if my skin had suddenly become red hot. The mirrored sunglasses couldn't hide the panic that flashed across his features as he turned fully to face the old woman. For the first time, I could see a man, not a monster. A scared, cornered man. "Mrs. Evans," he stammered, his voice suddenly 2 octaves higher. There's been a misunderstanding." "Has there, David?" she replied, her voice unwavering. She took another deliberate step down from the porch, her floral dress fluttering in the breeze. She wasn't frail at all. She was made of iron. "Because what I saw from my window didn't look like a misunderstanding. It looked like you were enjoying yourself." Miller fumbled with the key for my handcuffs, his hands shaking so badly he could barely fit it into the lock. "No, ma'am, not at all. This man, he was being uncooperative. He wouldn't show me his ID. It was a matter of officer safety." The cuffs sprang open. I pulled my hands away, rubbing the raw red welts on my wrists. The pain was a dull ache compared to the storm of emotions raging inside me. Relief, fury, and a strange, dizzying sense of whiplash. Minutes ago, I was powerless, a statistic in the making. Now, I was the center of a drama that had this bully of a cop sweating through his polyester uniform. "He told you his ID was in his car," Mrs. Evans stated, her eyes fixed on Miller. "I heard him quite clearly. You shoved him before he even had a chance to get it." I can explain everything to the chief," Miller pleaded, his gaze darting between me and the woman, as if trying to find an ally. "It's just protocol." "You can explain it to me first," she said. "Start with why you felt the need to slam this young man's head against that truck." She pointed her cane at a small dent on the side of the truck where my head had hit. I hadn't even realized it had left a mark. "And then you can explain why a permit is suddenly required to park a moving van on a Saturday afternoon on Northwood Drive, a street you well know has less traffic than the library on a Sunday." Just then, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb behind the police cruiser. It wasn't a squad car, but it had an official, no-nonsense look about it. A man in a crisp, perfectly tailored suit got out. He was tall and looked to be in his late 50s, with salt-and-pepper hair and a calm, authoritative air. His eyes swept over the scene, the police car parked at an aggressive angle, the moving truck, a sweating and flustered Sergeant Miller, his mother standing on the lawn with her cane, and me, rubbing my bruised wrists. "Mom," he said, his voice level but laced with concern. "What's all this?" "Sergeant Miller?" The chief of police had arrived. Miller snapped to attention, his face pale as a sheet. "Chief Evans, sir. I was just, responding to a call about a blocked roadway." Chief Evans's gaze settled on his mother. "A call? I thought you were waiting for me to pick you up." "I was," Mrs. Evans said, her voice softening slightly as she looked at her son, but the iron resolve was still there. "But your sergeant-at-arms here decided to provide some afternoon entertainment first. He was just giving our new neighbor a traditional Northwood welcome." The chief's eyes moved from his mother to me. They were sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He saw my wrists. He saw the new dent on the truck. He looked back at Miller, and his expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. For a long moment nobody spoke. The silence was deafening. Miller looked like he was about to be physically ill. Finally the chief spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "Sergeant, get in your car. Go back to the station. Do not speak to anyone. Sit at your desk and wait for me. Is that understood?" "Sir." "Yes, sir," Miller choked out. He practically scrambled into his cruiser, not even daring a backward glance. The car screeched away from the curb, leaving only the quiet hum of the afternoon behind. The chief of police then turned his full attention to me. He walked over, his polished shoes silent on the asphalt, and extended a hand. "I am Chief Evans, and I am profoundly sorry. On behalf of my department and my city, I apologize for what you just experienced." I shook his hand, my own still trembling slightly. "It's okay," I managed to say, though it wasn't. It wasn't okay at all. "No," he said, shaking his head firmly. "It is not okay. This is not who we are." He looked from me to his mother, then back again, a deep sadness in his eyes. He let out a long, weary sigh, the weight of his command, of his sergeant's failure, and of this entire ugly situation settling on his shoulders. He looked me straight in the eye, his expression grim. "Sergeant Miller will file a report, and I'm sure it will be full of procedural justifications for his every action," he said, his voice like gravel. "But that's just paper. I have a witness in my own mother, and I have you. And right now you are the only person in this situation who matters. So I want you to tell me, from the beginning, exactly what happened here. And then I want you to tell me what you want me to do about him." Standing there, with the chief of police asking me what I wanted, felt surreal. The power dynamic had shifted so violently it gave me vertigo. 15 minutes ago, I was a suspect, a piece of trash to be manhandled. Now I was the victim, the arbiter of another man's fate. My head was still throbbing where it had hit the truck, and the adrenaline was starting to curdle into a cold, hard knot of anger in my stomach. "I want him fired," I said. The words came out before I'd even fully formed the thought, but they felt right. They tasted like justice. Chief Evans didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "I understand that sentiment," he said. "Believe me, I do. But it's not that simple. The police union is strong. Miller's been on the force for 15 years. He's got a file thick with commendations, and a file just as thick with complaints, most of which have been dismissed for lack of evidence. You have a witness this time," I said, glancing over at his mother, who was watching us with a fiercely protective expression. "You have your own mother." "I do," he agreed. "And her testimony carries weight, but it still becomes a he said, she said scenario. Miller will claim he felt threatened, that you were non-compliant. The union will back him. They'll find a dozen loopholes, and in 6 months, after a paid suspension, he'll be back on the street. Maybe with a slap on the wrist, maybe assigned to desk duty for a while, but he'll be back." "Aunt." A wave of despair washed over me. Of course, the system protects its own. The blue wall of silence wasn't just a myth. It was an institution. Miller assaulted me in broad daylight, in front of a witness who happened to be the police chief's mother, and he was still likely to get away with it. The idyllic dream of Northwood was shattering before I'd even unpacked my first box. "So what are you saying?" I asked, my voice edged with bitterness. "That there's nothing you can do?" No, Chief Evans said, his tone shifting. It was no longer the voice of a weary administrator, but something sharper, more calculated. I'm saying a frontal assault is what they expect. It's what they're prepared for. But David Miller, he has other vulnerabilities. If you want him gone, truly gone, not just from the force, but from this town, there's another way. A more permanent way. I stared at him, confused. Mrs. Evans hobbled closer, her hand coming to rest on her son's arm. "Richard," she said, her voice a low warning. "What are you suggesting?" He looked down at his mother, his expression softening for a moment. "I'm suggesting we give this man the justice he deserves, Mom. The kind the system is too broken to provide." He turned back to me. "Miller has a side business, a private security firm. He uses his position as a sergeant to persuade local business owners to sign up for his protection services. It's extortion, plain and simple, but he's clever. He keeps it just on the right side of legal. He uses burner phones, conducts business in cash. He's untouchable." My mind was reeling. A cop running a protection racket. It sounded like something out of a gangster movie, not a quiet suburban town. "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because I've been trying to nail him for it for over a year," the chief said, a grim fire in his eyes. "He's a cancer in my department, and I can't cut him out. He's careful. He knows all the tricks because I taught them to him. He was my partner once, my rookie." The admission hung in the air, heavy with regret. "But I have an informant, one of the business owners he's been squeezing. The man is terrified, but he's been feeding me information. Miller is having a big meeting tonight. The last one. He's collecting his final payments before he expands his operation to the next town over. It's all happening at a warehouse on the old industrial road." "You're going to raid it?" I asked. The chief shook his head. "I can't. Miller is too smart for that. He'll have lookouts. The moment he sees a squad car within a mile, everything will disappear. The cash, the burners, the ledgers. I'd have nothing. No, a raid won't work." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "But you're a new face. No one knows you. My informant has a key to a side office in that warehouse. The office has a direct view of the main floor where the meeting is taking place. He's going to be there tonight." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "You want me to go in there? To spy on a dirty cop and his associates?" "I want you to plant a bug," he said, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "My informant will let you in. He'll show you where to put it. A small audio and video transmitter. State of the art. Once it's active, I'll have everything I need. Not just to fire him, but to put him in a cage for a very long time. It will be undeniable, irrefutable proof." This was insane. Absolutely insane. I was a software engineer, not a secret agent. I moved here for peace and quiet, and now the chief of police was asking me to go undercover, to take down a corrupt cop. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why can't you send one of your own guys?" "An undercover officer?" "Because Miller knows all my guys," the chief replied without hesitation. "He trained half of them. He'd smell a cop a mile away. But you're just the new guy in town, the guy he just assaulted. If anyone sees you near there, they'll assume you're just looking around, maybe getting the lay of the land. You're the perfect ghost." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I know it's a lot to ask. It's dangerous. But this is the only way. You wanted justice. This is what it looks like. This is how we make sure David Miller never hurts anyone ever again." My heart was hammering against my ribs. Fear and a strange, thrilling sense of purpose were at war within me. This was my chance to do more than just file a complaint that would go nowhere. It was a chance to fight back, a chance to take down the man who had humiliated and assaulted me on the very day my new life was supposed to begin. It was crazy. It was terrifying. But as I looked at the determined faces of the chief and his mother, I knew what my answer had to be. My new life wasn't just going to be quiet. It was going to start with a roar. The warehouse smelled of rust, damp concrete, and old oil. It was a cavernous, dark space with the only light coming from a few grimy, high windows that barely pierced the twilight gloom. My guide, a nervous, sweaty man named Mr. Henderson, who owned a local hardware store, led me through a maze of stacked pallets and silent machinery. Every scrape of my shoe on the floor sounded like a gunshot. The bug Chief Evans had given me was a tiny magnetic disc, no bigger than a button, tucked securely in my pocket. It felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Mr. Henderson unlocked a door to a small, cluttered office perched on a mezzanine level. "This is it," he whispered, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "The meeting's down there. They should be here any minute." He pointed to a grimy window that overlooked the main warehouse floor. Below, a single bare bulb illuminated a folding table and a few chairs, creating a small, stark island of light in the vast darkness. The chief said to put the device under the lip of that table. It's metal. It should stick right on. Just be quick and quiet. I'll keep watch from the door. My blood turned to ice. "Wait, you're not coming with me? The chief said you'd show me where to put it." Henderson shook his head, his eyes wide with terror. "No way. If Miller sees me, I've got a family. I'm sorry. I got you in. That's all I can do." Before I could argue, he slipped back out of the office, the lock clicking softly behind him. I was alone. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was a terrible, insane idea. I could just leave. I could walk out, drive home, unpack my boxes, and try to forget any of this ever happened. But then I thought of Miller's smug, hateful face. I thought of the feeling of his hands on me, the cold steel of the cuffs. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about taking back the power he had tried to strip from me. Taking a deep breath, I slipped out of the office and crept down the metal staircase, each step a carefully placed, silent movement. The main floor was even darker up close. The single light bulb above the table seemed to swallow the sound, making the silence feel heavy and suffocating. I reached the table, my hands trembling as I fumbled in my pocket for the device. I knelt, pretending to tie my shoe, and reached under the table. My fingers found the cold metal lip. I pressed the magnetic disc into place. It clicked, a tiny sound that seemed to thunder in the silence. It was done. I just had to get out. As I stood up, a beam of light sliced through the darkness. Headlights. A vehicle had pulled up to the warehouse's main roll-up door. Panic seized me. I was exposed, standing right in the spotlight. I scrambled back, diving behind a stack of wooden crates just as the heavy metal door began to groan its way open. A large black SUV rolled in. The engine cut, and 2 men got out. One was Officer David Miller, out of uniform, looking even more intimidating in a tight black polo shirt. The other was a man I didn't recognize, but he had the hard, cold look of someone who was used to violence. My breath caught in my throat. I was trapped. They walked to the table, and soon others began to arrive. Small business owners, their faces etched with fear and resignation. I recognized Mr. Henderson among them, trying to make himself invisible at the back of the group. One by one they approached Miller, handing over thick envelopes of cash. The bug was working. I could almost hear Chief Evans on the other end, the evidence mounting, the net tightening. Miller was laughing, leaning back in his chair, the king of his sordid little empire. "Pleasure doing business with you, gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Remember, this is for your protection. The world's a dangerous place. It pays to have friends in high places." That's when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his smile vanished. "What is it?" he barked into the phone. He listened for a moment, his face growing pale. "What do you mean a silent alarm was tripped at the side office? Who's there?" My blood ran cold. The side office. Henderson must have panicked. Or maybe it was a trap all along. Miller was on his feet instantly, his eyes scanning the darkness of the warehouse. His gaze swept past my hiding spot, and for a heart-stopping second I thought he'd seen me. He pulled a gun from the back of his waistband. "Somebody's here," he growled. "Find them." His associate pulled his own weapon, and they began to move through the warehouse, their flashlights cutting sharp beams through the dust-filled air. I was caught. There was no way out. The main door was their only exit, and they were between me and it. I pressed myself further into the shadows, making myself as small as possible, my mind racing. It was over. Then chaos erupted. The roll-up door slammed shut with a deafening crash, plunging the warehouse into near-total darkness, save for the flashlight beams. Red and blue lights suddenly strobed through the high windows, and the piercing shriek of sirens surrounded the building. "Northwood PD, Miller, you are surrounded. Come out with your hands up." It was Chief Evans's voice, amplified by a bullhorn, booming like the voice of God. Miller was stunned, frozen in the middle of the floor. He'd been so careful, so sure of himself. He never expected the trap to be sprung on his own terms. For a moment he looked completely lost. Then his face twisted into a mask of pure rage. He must have realized the silent alarm was a bluff, a way for the chief to pinpoint his location and move his teams in. He'd been played. "It's a setup," he screamed, and then his flashlight beam found me. It landed right on my face, pinning me like an insect. "You!" he roared, a sound of pure, murderous fury. He raised his gun. Everything went into slow motion. I saw the dark hole of the barrel, the tightening of his finger on the trigger. This was it. I was going to die. But before he could fire, a figure burst from the group of terrified business owners. It was Mr. Henderson. With a desperate cry, he lunged, not at Miller, but at the folding table. He heaved it with all his might, sending it crashing into Miller's legs. The shot went wide, the bullet ricocheting off a steel beam with a high-pitched whine. Miller stumbled, roaring in frustration. That was all the opening they needed. The side doors burst open, and tactical officers swarmed in, their weapons trained, laser sights dancing across Miller's chest. "Drop it! Now!" It was over. Miller stood there, blinking in the sudden glare of a dozen flashlights, a wild, cornered animal. Slowly, painfully, he let his gun clatter to the concrete floor. As officers swarmed him, forcing him to his knees and cuffing him with a satisfying final click, his eyes found mine one last time. They weren't filled with hate anymore. Just a hollow, empty defeat. Chief Evans came over to me as they led Miller away. "Are you all right?" he asked, his face a mixture of relief and concern. I could only nod, my legs shaking too much to stand. "You were very brave," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You got him. We got him. With the video, the audio, and the testimony of every person in this room, he's never going to see the outside of a prison cell again." A week later, I was finally unpacking that last box of books. The sun was streaming through my new living room window, and the street was quiet. Mrs. Evans had baked me a welcome pie, and the chief had stopped by personally to tell me that Miller's entire crooked enterprise had been dismantled, his associates all arrested. Northwood was safe. My new home was safe. As I placed the last book on the shelf, I looked out the window. A family was walking by, laughing. A kid was riding his bike on the sidewalk. It was peaceful. It was everything I had hoped for. I had come to this town looking for a new start, and in the most terrifying, unexpected way, I had found it. I hadn't just moved into a new house. I had helped reclaim the soul of my new town, and for the first time it truly felt like home.